How do organizations behave or operate like cults or religious institutions? How specifically is the pharmaceutical industry creating a belief system instead of explicitly advertising their products as consumer products? And what impact does this have on us as individuals and our society? How is the pharmaceutical industry operating as a modern cult? To understand how a religion or cult operates, we have to get to the foundation of belief systems, the cosmology. Cosmology is an account or theory of the origin of the universe. That's the technical definition. But what it really means is that it is interchangeable as our worldview, our perception of good and bad. It defines our social behaviors. It impacts our family structures, our political beliefs, and our perception of ourselves. So where does our need for cosmology come from? And cosmology leading to belief systems. Human beings are always in the process of world construction. So we are trying to make sense of a senseless world. Unlike animals who have specific instincts and set behaviors, human beings have no such pre-constructed world. Our world has to be created, and because we need to create our meaning and define or put meaning to our social behaviors, create social institutions, determine our purpose, and make sense of this blank slate world, we define chaos versus order, good versus bad, because we are categorical thinkers. And as categorical thinkers, we place ourselves within these categories that we created to make ourselves identifiable as good people, bad people, morally uprighteous, or deviant, or and on and on. So, as human beings, we want to avoid instability, but unfortunately, instability is an inevitable mark of human existence. So, we seek order through community. And that is what makes us human. We all want to belong to a moral community, not just any community, but a moral one. And this is where the basis of brainwashing and indoctrination can take place. So long as you identify the human's inherent need to belong to a moral community, and you can take control of constructing the cosmology that defines that morality in that community, then you can take control of human behavior and reinforce it with group identity. Now, the interesting thing here is that a behavior or social behavior does not actually have to be moral. It just has to be perceived as moral. For an example, masks or vaccines. These are man-made artificial social behaviors, and they don't really have a standard of morality to justify them, but they are defined or perceived as moral within the social institutions that we are engaging in. And who is constructing that social institution or that cosmology or that worldview? That is influenced by this industry. So, brainwashing or indoctrination is not like chanting or joining cults like popular culture has you believe. Real brainwashing, and the most powerful brainwashing, is so subtle through world construction and internalizing that world construction that the individual cannot identify a reality outside the manufactured cosmos. So this is a metaphor for how human beings try to make sense of their world. This is the universe on the outside. It is chaotic, it is undefined, it is disorderly, it is there is no meaning, nothing that can be defined out of the empty space. And also there's this firmament here. It's like a shield This has nothing to do with the theory of the earth. This is just a metaphor for how people think. So within this safety net of the firmament, within the social structures created by man or created by humans, we can find order, meaning, life, security, and safety. So people, human beings, become invested in creating a canopy, a sacred canopy, or internalizing a sacred canopy someone else has created for them. So then those who control the cosmology or provide the cosmology and construct the sacred canopy can control human perception and the human mind, because that is the lens by which we view the world. This role of world construction, of providing cosmology, of constructing the sacred canopy, was once filled by religion. But in postmodern and modern societies, and now in our ultra-globalized world, the role of religion to be providers of cosmology has declined. This is self-evident. There has been an organizational separation from religion and government, economy, and all other parts of civil society. So, as religion was legally separated from all these institutions within society, it limited religion's capacity to change or influence the world, regardless the number of converts or members the religion has. So, religion has been pushed aside, marginalized in its ability to influence the cosmology or worldview of society. Then, who took on the role that religion once filled? Most people think that it is governments. They think government took over the role of world construction, but did they really? If we take a look at our globalized society, we can see that there are transnational corporations who are really the ones behind the scenes influencing how we should perceive the world, how our laws function, what our institutions, educational institutions teach. And these transnational corporations are often more powerful than governments. They have more influence and more wealth than governments. They can own other corporations such as NGOs, nonprofits, which is how astroturfing comes about. They also own or influence mass media. So the way that mass media has evolved in modern society, or our globalized society, is that it has become a monopoly of information. Instead of being diverse media outlets that give you real journalism or real news, they have become a network of media outlets that are all influenced or owned by the same handful of corporations. So because these corporations then these media outlets rely on the funding from corporations for their existence, then the corporations can insert or put in their commercial interests as well as their political interests into the media. And these interests, the corporations' interests then influence the aim or create the aim of modern media, which is to control and manipulate our world construction. If you really look at how the media operates in its subtle uses of terminology, how it approaches the audience, it tells you not what the news is, but it tells you who to be, who you are, who to fear, who is your adversary, who is, how is the world functioning, who are the supposed groups or identities within society. So if you take a real close look at how media is operating, it's actually been one of the institutions that took on the role of cosmology or creating sacred canopy. So as a side note, Globalization, by eliminating diverse cultures and diverse theories of world cosmology and world constructions, instead created this global network of instruction that can manipulate humanity's perception of ourselves and our world. So when the pharmaceutical industry takes on the role of creating the sacred canopy, they define how we perceive our world and our place within our world and our role and purpose within our world. And of course, that depends on 4 elements. First is chaos. Chaos is virus, illness, and death. Then there's order, and order is obedience to medical authority. So the safety of the firmament, the safety of the shield of society can only be sustained so long as people are obedient to medical authority. And then there's division of clerics and laity. And this means that the profession of medical workers has been turned into religious clerics. So there's a professionalization of salvation, meaning the priesthood of doctors are the only ones who hold the exclusive knowledge, skills, and expertise to provide humanity with the path to salvation, the path to life from chaos. And this is how all religious organizations operate. They create the sacred canopy, and there has to be a path provided exclusively by this religious or belief system that you can only get from a professionalized group or clerics within that group that sustains the hierarchy of who can create the sacred canopy. So then, when the pharmaceutical industry creates the sacred canopy and shapes our belief systems, information that should be objective, public, and open, and interpreted with legal, scientific, medical perspective, is treated as though they are sacred texts. They are treated as though they are sacred religious texts that can only be interpreted if you are a part of the priesthood of doctors. Do you have the certification to understand the sacred text? Even though consumer information, manufacturer information, legal information are all information that can be understood by almost anybody with a little bit of effort, they are treated as though they are sacred and only to be interpreted by this hierarchy of doctors, and anybody who dares to even claim to understand this information is ridiculed or seen as arrogant or overstepping their boundaries. The next one is salvation. Salvation in the sacred canopy is through the use of medical products and undergoing medical procedures. For an example, baptism through vaccines. How do you ward off chaos? How do you preserve order and obedience by being obedient to medical authority? How do you gain the approval or identify yourself as a part of this world construction? And that is by baptism through vaccines. That's one example. Or there's also some things such as preaching work, like attacking heretics. Anybody who speaks out against the official narrative of the medical industry, against corporate science, is seen as heretics. There's also denying victims of products and procedures justice. So because this is a belief system, it's not that victims should be treated as though they are individual victims who deserve legal compensation, social acknowledgement, and emotional healing. They are treated in the same way that sexual abuse victims of cults and religions are treated. The individuals are denied justice to preserve the organization's reputation. So it's doctrine over people. So what this all means is that the medical industry is no longer operating as a profession, but it is operating as a religious or belief system. So publications and legal information are treated as though they are sacred texts, and the relationship is no longer between a service provider and a consumer, but between savior and subordinates. That's it for part 1. Don't forget to subscribe and check out part 2, psychological manipulation.